I think we should start. We'll wait for another minute.
Somebody should be doing 4, 3, 2, 1.
Perfect. I think you can start.
Right. So, good evening and a very warm welcome to both the distinguished speakers and the viewers of the BSE Reboot, organized by the Bombay Stock Exchange and ARC Legal. Today's talk is centered on the data center landscape in India. So, as we know, the pandemic has caused a shift towards cloud, accelerating digital transformation across the industries and causing an increase in demand for hyperscale data centers. India's data center market size was valued at US 945 million US dollars in 2021, and it's expected to reach 5 billion US dollars by 2025. That's a huge sum. So, to understand the current landscape of data centers in India today, we have with us India's data center man, Sunil Gupta, the co founder and CEO of Yotta Infrastructure. He is best known as the person who has built and operated the most number of third-party data centers in India. Under his vision, Yotta was formed to power India's digital economy driven by data. Yotta has been powering the digital ecosystem with data storage and compute capacity via India's largest uptime certified Tier 4 hyperscale data center park in Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, and it has upcoming data parks in Tamil Nadu, NCR, Delhi NCR, West Bengal, and other regions in India. So, for the first time in India, Sunil sir is instrumental in offering data center built services on the colocation model, which hyperscalers and cloud players can utilize without blocking their capex and still get the same dedicated, tailor-made infrastructure. So, very warm welcome to you, sir. To
Thank you.
complete the data center landscape discussion, we also have with us Khusbu Jain. Ms. Jain is a practicing advocate before the Supreme Court of India and the founding partner of ARC Legal. She has been on the legal counsel on several complex and path-breaking corporate and criminal cases. Ms. Jain has been helping in capacity building by imparting skills to various government and international institutions in the field of cyber and technology-related crime investigations. She has also been contributing to Maharashtra Cyber and Bombay Management Association in an advisory role. So, without taking any more of everybody's time, I request Ms. Jain to begin this exciting conversation. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Vaibhavi. All right. So Indian data center market has seen tremendous growth in the past decade, riding from explosion of data through smartphones, through social media networking websites, e-commerce platforms, digital entertainment, digital education, digital payments, and many other digital businesses and services. Now, this growth has further stimulated by adoption of emerging technologies such as quantum computing, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, so on and so forth. Now, this burgeoning volume of content and data is generated also can be termed as a critical factor determining the future. Now, investments in smart cities, with investment in smart cities with millions of joining Internet Expressway via e-commerce, agri-tech, digital transactions, including mobile payments, and let's not forget the rural banking, evolving healthcare, data landscape, all pointing towards unimaginable volume of data that needs to be managed and needs to be kept safe. Now, this has been supported by various efforts by the Government of India in forms of various enablement for the sector, and one such is data centers. So, Sunil, I would want you to throw some lights as to what are the key trends that are shaping the Indian data center landscape, and also enlighten us as to how this industry is growing, especially keeping in mind the size of the digital population in India and the growth trajectory of Indian economy, which necessitates the strong growth of data center industry.
Thanks, Khusbu. I think a lot of things which I wanted to be a part of my answer, you have already spoken in terms of the trends. Khusbu, fundamentally, the data centers are part and parcel of our digital life. We may or may not be experiencing it as a user. Whenever we click some icon on our mobile phone or laptop or desktop, or when, let's say, Alexa speaks to us something, we don't even know that we are touching, our clicks are going to a data center and coming from a data center, right? So if we see that our digital life from early 2000, when practically there was no digital life, to a life today where anything and everything around us, our personal life, which is WhatsApp, Instagram, Snapchat, and OTTs and Netflix of the world, and our professional life, which is our emails, which is our SAPs, our Oracles, and IoTs and big data, e-commerce, everything and everything at the end of the day, at the back end, is running into some or the other data center. While data center industry, because of these trends, enabling trends, were already present in mature markets like a US or a Europe or a Singapore already. So the markets also developed accordingly in those countries. So data centers kept pace with the growth of digitalizations there. In India, what we could see was that while all the enabling elements of digitalization started coming in, the wireless telephony came in, 2G became 3G, 3G became 4G, essentially the speed of downloads increased, and now within 1 year we'll see 5G also coming in, right? We see so much of development in broadband coming in, which is where India still kept, catching up. We could see e-commerce coming in, we could see startups coming and building so much of content for us and all. In fact, we could see because of the economic growing and people having so much of disposable income that people started using e-commerce like anything, and that became a part of our life. The infrastructure has not grown along with this growth of the users and the usage use cases. Today, you would be shocked to know that total data center market in India, we typically don't call it in square feet language or a racks language, we call it in megawatt. The total data center capacity in India till about 5 years back was 200 megawatt, right? And even despite a lot of growth because of these elements, a lot of existing players started building more capacity, new players started building capacity. And cloud operators came in India, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and a lot of content operators came. Government also made some of the sectors to keep their data in India itself, like BFSI. Because of all these factors, the capacity in the last 5 years has practically doubled, 400 megawatt, right? However, if I try to see this capacity in relation to India's population, and if we try to see a ratio, what is the megawatt capacity of data center in India compared to its population, and we compare that with the rest of the world, we are 1 by 45 of what US is. We are 1 by 17 of what a Europe is, and we are 1 by 7 of what a Japan and Hong Kong is, and we are 1 by 3 of what a China is, right? So considering that in India, we as citizens have always been a very early adopter of technology. We consume technology like anything. Our rickshaw puller also carries a smartphone nowadays. The infrastructure has to catch up. So if we have to just go by these numbers and see that what India has to catch up, let me give you one more data and then I'll come to this point. While most of the enterprise data, the data which is used by enterprises to run their operations is mostly in India already, right? Because of many factors, including performance. But the consumer data, which typically is lying in social media sites, the Facebook, the WhatsApp, the Insta, at earlier times, TikTok and all, right? All these data is still lying outside, right? And on all these platforms, Indians happen to be either the number one or the number two number of users, right? TikTok, when it exited India, used to have 20 crore Indian subscribers. Facebook seems to have 40 crore Indian subscribers, right? If this amount of data, which is mostly video, is residing outside of India, you can just imagine if this data is brought into the Indian shores, what type of capacity will be required to be created in India. So net, because of all these multiplicity of demand drivers, coupled with very little supply where India has lagged behind, if we combine these two factors together, we estimate, and I have been very vocal about it, India needs either 7 or 15 times, and we can pick up any number between that much of a multiple capacity in the next 7 to 10 years. That is where I think the industry is building capacities. There are existing players who used to build smaller data centers earlier. They are catching up. A lot of foreign equity is coming in. A lot of local entrepreneurs, including like Yotta, promoted by Hirandanis, have come in. Adanis have come in. Almost all the global large operators who are very big worldwide in data center industry have they announced their plans at least, and have started doing some initial planning to build data center capacity in India. So this is going to be a big wave of infrastructure creation to promote our digital life in next 7 to 10 years.
Absolutely. I think what you have said is to understand that how this industry is actually growing and can also be depicted from the government of India's aspiration to turn India into a the global data hub, and it has got various policies and reforms to reach this goal. And one such would be the government is targeting to an investment of approximately 3 lakh crores in the next 5 years as a part of hyperscale data center scheme, and is also planning to provide 3 to 4% of capital incentives as an incentives to companies along with real estate support and faster clearances. But let's not forget that this need which we are finding today, apart from India having advantage of favorable geographical location on the world map, availability of economic resources, cost-effective access of power, readily available skilled manpower, and also enabling the other factors. The much talked about cyber security laws and data localization. So coming on the aspect of data localization norms, which is part and parcel of the pending data protection bill, this need for data center infrastructure within the boundaries of country is further has added necessitated with this data localization provisions proposed in Data Protection Act, and also for the protection of, when we're talking about TikTok, what comes in my mind is protection of digital sovereignty of the country in this increasingly connected world. Also to understand the aspect, whereas different countries have different data localization norms, and India, as you rightly said, is one of the largest data generation. We generate one of the largest, our country generates largest data. So what are your views, whereas data protection and localization norms are concerned, which are in a way creating opportunity for data centers in India?
Yeah, Khusbu. So first and foremost, the data protection. Every individual citizen of any country, right, has the right to protect his data, to decide whether this data will be used or accessed by anybody else, to repurpose by anybody else. And if at all I give a consent it to be used, I still have a right to take back my consent, right, or decide for what purpose this data will be used. And I should be ultimate beneficiary of. If this data become anonymized data, it creates some trends, it creates some intelligence which results into a benefit to the end purpose who is repurposing this and creating intelligence out of this. How I as a user also ends up benefiting from that. Ultimately, this entire debate is relating to citizen data protection, and of course, a debate also linked to that the I would say non-beneficial purposes, the data should not be used, right? And we know that this data, if not controlled within the laws of the land, not within the domains, it can also create problem for the sovereignty of country as well. So from that point of view, I think there's no denying the fact that this is something which is required. The world has gone towards that. The GDPR is all about that. Many countries have actually gone and ahead and they are implementing their respective data protection laws. Now, India is no exception. I think, as you know, for the last 3 years, the debate is going on. The Shri Krishna committee had put up a recommendation. It has gone through various cycles. Of course, like annual usual democratic practices, it will put to multiple debates, multiple views. And we are all hoping that in the current form and shape, when it is introduced in Parliament in the current session, hopefully it will be passed. Now, as you know, uh, this bill in the current format, and as you know, it's no more a personal data protection bill. It is a data protection bill because even the non-personal data also has been taken within this because you create anonymized data, the so-called non-personal data, also from your personal data. And that actually creates more value because that is where you can influence the end users or the voters, or for that matter, any segment to create value out of that, right? So from that perspective, this assumes much larger proportion. Any sensitive personal data cannot be taken out of the country. If at all is taken out, the approval of DPA is required, which in turn will take the approval of the government, right? And it will not be easy. Everybody understands that. So even if it is allowed, it will go through so much of problem. Possibly most of the people will think better to host in India. Critical data in any case cannot be taken out of the country, right? So I think the intent of the government is very clear. And I think for the benefit of the country is that the data which belongs to our citizens, whether it is the direct usage of data or whether you create intelligence out of the anonymous data, it has to be lying within the shores of the country. It not only helps you in protecting your sovereignty and security, it also helps in growth of the economy, because ultimately that data when processed create economic value, which is much bigger than any other economic value, right? Coming on data centers, this is a boon. While we were talking about all the current factors because of which the data center capacity has to be, we have to catch up and we have to build like 7 or 10 times more. And enterprise captive data centers are moving to centralized data center. Cloud operators are trying to take all the IT of enterprise to centralized data center. So those were existing factors, right? IoT, AI, ML coming in, creating big algorithms using this data. All this also is coming to data center. But this localization, so the corollary of data protection is data localization, right? The moment we say data, personal and the sensitive and critical data has to be localized, stored and processed in India, the entire Indian user data, the current data, which is in offshore countries, will have to be brought into India within a defined period of time, which will be, I'm sure, will come in the bill. And also all future data which will be created will have to be processed and stored in India. Based on my estimate of what a typical size of a social media operator is, depending on, let's say if somebody has a 10 crore user, what is the size of their data center requirement, or 20 crore, I can tell you whatever capacity we were estimating based on the current demand drivers, this will create maybe more than double extra capacity which will be required to be built in India from a data center point of view to localize the entire existing Indian users data as well as the future generated users data.
So to sum up, I can say that this push by the government of India for data localization and introduction of data protection bill clearly outlines the need for big investment, whereas data center infrastructure is concerned.
Absolutely.
Now, when we talk about data center, when we talk about such an opportunity which India is going to create, I cannot not think about or ponder upon security aspect. That's one of the niche where security, we are seeing breaches, we are seeing hackers are here to stay, attacks are going to happen. So security has been and will be the most important feature in data center, because of it's a critical infrastructure is housed. Data centers is nothing but a critical infrastructure of it's a critical infrastructure house for all the corporates and all the entities across. There are numerous security components that need to be or must be considered separately, but follow a unified security policy is what I can understand. And to go ahead with, you're required to abide by countries' laws where your customers are located. We have seen it in GDPR, we have seen it in, we have examples which are already there. And each of these countries have different kind of mandates, and something similar is what we are trying to bring in, whereas India is concerned. So when we are talking about extremely critical data, sensitive data, we are talking about banking details, we are talking about biometrics data, and let's not forget, if such kind of a data is been, is in some antisocial elements hand, what damage or wonders they can do. So that means that data centers are required to comply with different standards based on their locations, based on construction environments, based on security regulations in specified different countries. Now, when we talk about, there are some common international standards which I am aware about, which Sunil, I'm sure you'll be able to ponder more upon, such as ISO 9001,
Right.
SOC 1, SOC 2, 3, and there are also country-specific regulations. Now, why is data? I want you to throw more light that why data center security is important, and what are the ways this data center are keeping themselves safe.
Let me first, expand this discussion a little bit. See, ultimately, any usage of internet, digital life, there are three components. There's the end device, which can be a mobile, which can be a laptop, desktop, or it can be a sensor also in today's day, right? Then there's a network in between, which can be our mobile wireless network, or it can be a broadband, which is coming in our home like a fiber, right? And at the other end of the spectrum is the data center, where the content is hosted, which you are trying to access or you are trying to upload somewhere there, right? Security issues are there at all the 3 points. At the back data center, because all the content is getting uploaded there, processed there, and taken from there. So naturally, that is your home, and you have to put the biggest fortress around your home so that the data is not, misused or taken by for wrong purposes. But whether the data, when it's traveling from the home up to your device, whether it is safe during that transit itself, that also is a security question to be addressed. And whether data, when it comes to your device, whether the data is secure there, because most of the data breaches which is happening, which we all get to know in our personal lives, are the breaches at the device end. You just share your password to somebody else. As simple as that, right? And then any type of security of the backend fortress also goes for a toss if you just share your password with somebody, right? Or you share like your ATM pin, for example, with somebody, or you click on some malware link, which basically allows your access to your device to somebody else. So that is, first is that point, that it is everywhere. And we as citizens need to do our own respective bit to be very aware about that security is also in our own hands itself, right? What we can do on our device, patches, security, awareness, what to click, what not to click, which sites to go into, which sites not to go into, right? That is one part. Second part on the data center side. Earlier, enterprise, I'm giving you a little bigger picture of the whole thing. Earlier, our life was simple. In personal life, there was no digitization. The TV also was coming on cable, so there was no digitization, right? And it was only in enterprise life you used to have so-called digitalization, the IT part. So you used to have captive data center of enterprises, which are in their own offices. You have your own private lease line or MPLS network, and your own private desktops and laptops. Not even laptop, desktops. So it was a very, very secured, fenced boundary, and you were able to put a control. The only danger was actually your own internal employees, internal stakeholders. So there was awareness and a lot of policies around there. Now your data center is not one. First of all, you're not into your own office. You are into a third-party data center. You're not into one data center. You may be hosting some content in one data center, some other in some other data center, some other into some Amazon cloud, some fourth in Google cloud, some fifth into some other data center. So your content actually has got distributed across multiple clouds and multiple data centers. So the challenge, first of all, to make the picture a little scary, with more digitalization, more options to grow this digitalization, more data centers, more clouds, more networks, more devices. So the security risk become as much bigger more. Now, how to control it? At data center end, fundamentally, it can be divided into cyber security, and it can very well be divided, will be classified separately into a physical security as well. From cyber security point of view, and again, using your language, I know you talk about that subject quite a lot about, the data protection bill. There are two actors there in data center fundamentally. There can be multiple, but fundamentally there are two actors. One is data fiduciaries, and second are data processors. The real control has to be put on the data fiduciaries, because they are the ones who are touching the actual data. They are the ones who are running the website, they're running the portal, they are running the application where the data is being ingested. So the real control, and that is where either their machines or their people are processing the data. So what controls and practices and systems and certifications they bring on that layer, what type of audit mechanism we bring. And I think that the bill actually talks about even the audit mechanisms and checking mechanisms as well. And you have to put a data protection officer mandatorily as a top management person in significant fiduciaries and all. So that is one part. Underlying layer is the data processor layer. That is where the people who are possibly giving the cloud layer or the data center layer, people like us who will come into picture. That is where technology plays a role. Less of a people, but technology plays a role. Whether I put the right firewalls, whether I put the right intrusion detection system in place, whether I've done all the right patchings into my operating system, databases, applications, right? So, and there are multiplicities of technologies which are needed. There are multiplicity of awarenesses and certificate mechanism. You talked about 9,000. The right certification for security, for example, 27,000, right? ISO 27001. You need to go through SOC 1 type 2, SOC 2 type 2. These are all various certifications who are trying to touch different aspects of security from different means, but with the ultimate purpose that data is used only by the people who actually are supposed to, access it. Needless to say, irrespective of what role you are playing, either you are playing the role of a processor or a fiduciary, you need to be taking care of the technology layer as well as the process layer, as well as the awareness and training layer of your people to take care of security in a holistic manner. And just to touch upon that, the moment it is data center, I sometimes jokingly said that many of the people possibly are not aware what a data center building is for a country's economy, because that is where most of the businesses reside and run. Even if something goes wrong to our website, literally, our business goes for a standstill. We know that, right? So even from a physical security point of view, how secure is your data center? right? I mean, people like us, and I'm sure all the good players in the industry, India and worldwide, we protect our data center like a fortress. You will possibly not come across the type of security which you see in data center at airports also. So we have to actually ensure that even physically, only and only the minimum number of people who are really authorized to touch a server or a storage of a customer, only they can touch, otherwise they cannot touch.
Absolutely. And any shortfall in security posture of data center can create vulnerabilities for the company that relies upon its aspect of, digital transformation progress, from digital strategy to IT to cloud enablement. Now, this poses a risk not just for the shareholders of the service provider, but to the shareholders of the company whose operations are disrupted by such a breach. I absolutely understand that the liability or the responsibility is with the data fiduciary, rather than we become a secondary part of it. But yes, nonetheless, it is very important. You are practically a house to the entire critical infrastructure of the country. So a core role of data centers operators business is to protect the data it hosts, and therefore comes the question, how well or poorly is the data center industry doing in protecting its data? And I think you already answered that question. You touched upon that question, because I cannot not stop saying that data breaches are global reality, impacting everybody everywhere. I don't want to give an example. There have been in the past breaches which were there have been cyber attacks hit data centers who have been hit by cyber attacks, and it's every industry. It's law firms, it's investment firms, anywhere where resides the critical data has become important. So people understand that yes, this is the place, how important data has become. I mean, just to give an example, I think Equinix was hit by a ransomware attack in 2020, and it was one of the critical digital infrastructure, and it had somewhere around $67 billion of hit. So to go on, I think I would want you to ponder more in regard to how well as India we are doing, whereas security aspect, whereas taking care of people's data is concerned, we are still new. Whereas when we understand what is exactly non-personal data, what is personal data, what is happening, and our data protection bill is still in the nascent stage. It's still forming. We are still not able to. We are still in the process of actually defining data principles and what are your rights, and which data can practically go out, which cannot. And one such example which we actually saw was the RBI's circular, which said that none of the financial institutes' data can go outside India, is where the entire rush happened. That India is one of the largest space where we need to keep have data centers in India. And not to forget that, I think the report which I read last time was that the zettabytes of data is generated today is, to grow from 33 zettabytes in 2018 to 175 zettabytes by 2025, whereas data sphere is concerned. And, this has to keep in mind, this data has to keep in mind that there are data residencies laws, the use, the governing laws of storage and everything, which can create a boom for data centers. But I again want to touch upon the part of data breaches and how good we are in protecting our data center industry and the data of the customers. Over to you. And I think I can have a closing remarks from you as well on this.
Yeah, sure, Khusbu. I tell you, there are two aspects to this. And as we were talking, I started pondering on this. There are two aspects to this. One aspect is where we are talking about that whether my data can be used by somebody else or not, or whether I have given my consent or not, or whether somebody misuses my data in processing the data without my consent. That is where essentially the data protection laws, which like India is also talking about forming, are coming into picture, right? These are still legal means. Okay, there's a debate and you make a law, what you can use, what you cannot use without consent and all, right? Thus, the bigger security discussions, or I would say equally important security discussion, which has been a bigger concern when we talk about these attacks, then it is not like like for example, Facebook never should not have your data and they attack your data. They never do that. That is more of a taking your consent, whether you want it or not, but you just press the button and do that. So that was a different thing. Here we are talking about professional hackers, right? No consent, no consent. They just go into your computer and they actually take your data. We are actually talking about that hacking, right? This actually is something different than a data protection law. Now, that is where I would say there are two. So again, to differentiate and then be clear on the role of the data center. There are data center operators, and which are most of the data center operators in the world, who are practically providing only the infrastructure for people to bring their hardware and software and run their services, right? So their role actually gets limited to providing a very good building, a very good physical security to enter the building, a very good power system and cooling system, and of course a network system to enter into, right? uh, they do not get into the IT part of the customer system. So the IT part, right, and all the associated security part be left to the customer to take care of that, which the customer either takes care themselves. Again, the customer here practically becomes so-called the data fiduciary, who basically takes care of their security on with their own means, either with their own internal team and tools, or whether using some third-party, service providers who actually are good at that. There are data center operators, for that matter, including Yotta, and there are a couple of them in India also, who actually say that we are not only providing you the data center building, the so-called co-location, but we are also giving you the complete IT layer to run your website. So whether it is a hardware layer or an operating system layer or a database layer, and all the thing which goes below your application is also provided by the data operator. Now that is where the cyber security part, because that responsibility then starts coming on the data center operator, becomes very, very critical. My I would say feedback on this is Indian data center operators are as good as any operator anywhere in the world in terms of the quality of data centers, and also in terms of the cyber security or the physical security of the data center. The industry has taken its own, I would say, phases in growing to the stage where it is today. But I have seen it continuously over the last 22 years, and I've visited so many of data centers, seen their practices, across their availability criteria, across their security criteria. India is as good as any other data center in the world in terms of, and if I talk specifically on security, be it security practices, security processes, or in terms of awareness of its people who are manning this data center and running the services, it's as good as anywhere in the world. But yes, there is no limit to the moment you talk about cybersecurity, the hacks are getting generated every day. The new means to hack, the new means to attack into somebody's security is happening every single day. So how aware you are, how updated you are, and how much you are continuously investing into skills and tools is something you have to keep on doing, and that is what will keep on making you updated and making sure that your data center is not attacked for your customers.
Absolutely. I mean, I completely agree with you that there is a distinction, and data centers provide. I mean, it's taking different rules, and in different aspects comes the different responsibilities and capabilities. Now, yes, I completely I understand, and it was amazing to understand that how this entire industry works, and what are the liabilities, and what are the areas, and how we can actually go to becoming a data center hub, India becoming a data center hub, and what are the areas which need to be looked upon and need more of an investment in terms of money, in terms of expenditure, exposure, and different areas. Now, to close it, I would say that data center is a home to organizations of most critical infrastructure, and that's why security, compliance, depending on what kind of data center you are, security, compliance, redundancy, and connectivity are the basic requirement for data centers to make this industry scalable and secure enough to meet the current and future need. And let's hope for the new data protection bill to come in place so that our industry flourishes and grows to the next level.
Absolutely, Khusbu. I mean, you summed it very, very well. Absolutely. Data centers are the backbone of digitization. India, I mean, there's no reason to believe that, there's no reason not to believe that India will be absolutely at the top in terms of the usage of digitization. We can see it in our daily lives every day. For this digitization to sustain and to keep India as a leadership position, we need a strong data center infrastructure. We are already less in terms of the supply compared to the demand, and there's much more new use cases coming in the future, including AI, ML, and obviously the impacts of localization. A huge capacity will be required. There will be concerns of scalability. There'll be concerns on availability of huge amount of power, which we are not discussed today, but that is another big subject in data center. There'll be huge discussions and narratives on usage of green power. And there'll be narratives, of course, on data localization and the security around that. So all these aspects will be coming into play as we go in making our lives more and more digital in India.
Thank you. Thank you. It was wonderful talking to you.
Thank you, Khusbu. Thank
Could
you.
not
Very,
have
very
had
wonderful
discussion
talking to
with
you.
this anybody better.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay. So while my understanding of data center landscape was strictly limited to the textbook definition of what a data center is before today, this talk has certainly expanded that understanding to not only include the various other aspects that are involved in the growth of the data center market in our country and globally, the impact of data localization on this market, and the challenges and opportunities that lie in the securitization of these centers. As Sir explained very in a lot of details, India's data center usage has grown from around 200 megawatts in the last 5 years to more than 400 megawatts, and it continues to grow at an incredible pace. Both Khusbu ma'am and Sunil sir also explained how, in great detail, how data localization is truly the corollary of data protection, and the data that belongs to our citizens and the intelligence that is created out of that data should lie within our country to protect not only the sovereignty of a country, but also to create economic growth for the citizens of that country. So to conclude, a very, very sincere thank you to both Sunil sir and Khusbu ma'am for this informative talk today. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Vaibhavi. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you,
Take care.
everybody. Bye-bye.